hi. I didn't see you there. You're probably wondering what am I doing on this small house on this even smaller island. Well, it turns out paying the judges under the table to turn over Roe v. Wade was not a good idea, so I'm in a lot of hot water. Turns out there are child labor laws. So I resided here, in this small house. Don't know who the owner is, but my Jeeves talked to him, and we're gonna be staying here for a little while. Also, for some reason, this island is filled with dinosaurs. I do not know what that's about, but hey, it might be important. However, the rampant dinosaur population on this relatively small island gave me the idea to review Jurassic World Dominion. Ah yes, Jurassic World Dominion, the sixth and final film of the Jurassic Park franchise. This film actually garnered a genuine amount of hype. You got dinosaurs roaming in the streets, the original cast coming back, the Dilophosaurus coming back, you even got feathered dinosaurs. Feathered dinosaurs! This shit was gonna be crazy! However, this excitement then turned to dread when people started talking poorly about the film, and I was definitely scared. But I still treaded on. I got tickets, I took my friend to see the movie, and it was decent. Yeah, that's it. It was decent. I enjoyed it. But it definitely had a lot of problems. But before we get into those problems, let's talk about the good stuff. First off, I am so glad they brought back the original cast. It's not only great to see these people in these roles again, but it's also greater to see them doing stuff. Like, stuff that actually forwards the plot, if you know what I mean. And, of course, the respected actors bring in the charm of each of their characters that they play, and it's just great to see them all together on the big screen again. Even after all of these years, man, it's just great. But surprisingly enough, it's not just them that return, but the Jurassic World Legacy characters also return as well. Franklin, Zia, even Barry comes back as well. Even the new characters, Kayla Watts and Sonia, were actually pretty decent. Granted, they're not great, but, you know, pretty good additions. I thought they would be worse. But, who cares about people? They're stupid and gross. You want me to talk about the dinosaurs. Now, I could talk about some of the returning favorites from Fallen Kingdom and obviously the rest of the Jurassic Park films. That would take too long and be pointless. So let's talk about some of the newer dinosaurs. The Triceratops were actually dinosaurs I thought I would not like at all, but they actually started to grow on me. Their action sequence was really good, and their designs are pretty decent. I really loved the design of Ghost, as her design does stick out among the rest of the four. The Pyroraptor, being the second raptor species in this movie, is also really cool. Its action sequence, while short, was pretty enjoyable, as it was given the ability to swim. Granted, it would be highly unlikely that the real animal would be able to swim, but hey, it's still a pretty cool action sequence. And I also loved its red feathered coat, its beautiful wings, its methodic face, its cool little hairdo. It's a really cool design, alright? Dimetrodons also make an appearance in this film, and their action sequence is pretty cool too. Like most of the dinosaurs in the Jurassic World trilogy, it's a no-brainer that Dimetrodon should have been in this series from the start. And he's finally in, and he's pretty cool. I like his design. I mean, you can't really ruin a Dimetrodon design. The Quetzalcoatlus exists. Yeah, he barely shows up in this film. Whilst his design is, again, really solid, he doesn't even show up that much in the film. He's just there to destroy the plane. That's it. Would have loved to see more Rodan, honestly. The Giganotosaurus is my least new favorite dinosaur in Jurassic World Dominion. I mean, sure, it looks cool, I guess, but it's really lame. I mean, all it really does is fight the T-Rex, attack our main characters, fight the T-Rex again, and then fucking dies. The biggest carnivore the world has ever seen barely shows up in this film and dies. Also, its design is kinda crappy, to be honest. Sure, it looks cool, but we already had a really solid Jurassic World version of a Giganotosaurus, and it looks really good. It's simple, not overly spiky. Why did they have to change it to this? It just looks too edgy. It looks dumb. Why did they... Why? No, seriously, why? Well, since we talked about my least favorite dinosaur in Jurassic World, might as well talk about my favorite dinosaur in Jurassic World. Jetstream Slash. Yeah, so to my shock, the Therazinosaurus ended up becoming my favorite dinosaur in Jurassic World Dominion. Yeah, well, it still has the same problem as the Giganotosaurus, at least by design. What they actually do with the Therazinosaurus is really cool. In its introduction scene alone, we see it stalking Claire and killing a deer in one shot. It sent a motherfucking deer to the Shadow Realm. That is metal. And then later on, it teleports to the final battle and actually helps out the Tyrannosaurus Rex and actually is the thing that impales the Giganotosaurus, making the Therazinosaurus actually the first herbivore to help out in a carnivore v carnivore battle. Again, my main issue is its design. While I still love it, it's hella inaccurate, especially around its head, almost looking like a turtle. But honestly, even if that's still my biggest complaint, it's still not a bad dinosaur. Not only was he executed very well, but he was probably the only new dinosaur in Jurassic World Dominion that truly won over my heart. And by God, I love this turtle-faced psychopath more than anyone ever should. And the final praise that I will give this thing is its dinosaur black market scene, as it's really cool. It's got some practical dinosaur effects, it's got a really cool action sequence, a cockfight. It's really well done, almost giving me Pacific Rim vibes. And also a little honorable mention, the Carnotaurus design. I think it's really cool. I like the iridescent black and little bits of reddish orange in its cracked horn. I thought that was really cool, not gonna lie. Wow, this movie seems to be very flawless. It's got the good characters and the fun dinosaur scenes. What seems to be the problem with it? Well, whilst the dinosaurs do eat fire and swim in water and slap deer, most of the movie focuses on a locust plot, by which I mean everything for some reason is focused on these locusts. Every single event that happens in this film is all because of stupid bugs. Why did Ellie Sattler have to meet Alan Grant? Locusts. Why were Maisie and Beta kidnapped? Locusts. Why was the island on fire? Because the locusts were on fire. This entire movie's plot is centered around locusts, and while it's not distracting, it's definitely odd, especially since this is in a series that's mainly focused on dinosaurs. Why have this locust plot? It just kind of feels unwanted and forced in. My second issue with this film is Dogson. On one hand, he's back, but on the other hand, he sucks. All he is some evil rich asshole who wants to control the world for some inconspicuous reason, and then moments later gets killed by his own creation. Kinda like Walter Simmons from Godzilla vs. Kong, except where Walter Simmons was at least somewhat enjoyable, Dogson is just kinda boring. Oh, and also kind of a bad villain, as at one point he has a temper tantrum and hits his chair. And for God's sakes, he doesn't have a final confrontation with our main cast, as he dies to a bunch of Dilophosauruses. Granted, it's a pretty cool death sequence, but what's the point? Dogson is just a poo-poo-ass villain, and he sucks. Now, there are also a bunch of other problems with Jurassic World Dominion, but the last one I am going to be focusing on is its pacing. Now, this has actually been a problem with most of the Jurassic Park sequels, aside from Jurassic World and obviously the original Jurassic Park. However, Dominion probably has the most baffling pacing because it's practically all over the place. Sometimes, the pacing is totally fine, it's genuinely decent, and it flows almost flawlessly. It especially holds true with some of the dialogue scenes and the Therazinosaurus scene, but at other times, it's either way too long or way too short. Good examples of the latter being certain dinosaur scenes, like the stuff with the Quetzalcoatlus and Pyroraptor being a little bit too short. The other good example is the opening sequence and the ending montage, which, again, are very short. However, for sequences that go too long, they can go pretty long. The best example of the former I can think of is the stuff that happens in Malta. Granted, for the first few minutes, it was really good. I like the parts where Claire and Owen were hunting the Triceratops and fighting Sonia, as well as, again, the stuff in the dinosaur black market. However, once they get to the actual chase, it starts to overstay its welcome. Well, at least in my opinion. Or you got stuff like the final fight scene, which feels awkwardly paced, though granted, that's just the way I describe this movie's pacing. It's awkward and uneven. In fact, that's how I would describe this entire movie. Awkward and uneven. But there is some enjoyment I could find with this movie. The characters are decent and the dinosaur stuff is really good. The problem is that it had uneven pacing and unfocused plot. Now, it would have been fine if it was a movie in the middle of the franchise, but no. This is the final movie in the franchise. The song swan to end it all. Yet, in my personal and honest opinion, it just kind of underdelivered. Now, there are some people who love this movie, and some people who hate this movie. I'm more or less the person in between. It has really good elements and really bad elements, but it's not a complete disaster of a flick. I was still able to find some enjoyment in this odd oddity of a Jurassic Park flick, but ultimately the biggest problem was that it underdelivered. So, my best rating for this thing is a 6 out of 10, which is really disappointing. The final swan song of Jurassic Park, and it was a 6 out of 10. Such a shame. And too bad, because Universal has a monopoly on dinosaur flicks. I wish there was a good dinosaur-related thing that was good and wasn't Jurassic Park. Maybe a documentary with the narration of Sir David Attenborough, with the music of Hans Zimmer, with the best, most paleo-accurate models that will ever grace the screen, brought to life by the most beautiful CGI. But that's not gonna happen. Not for a million years. Hey, wait a minute. Prehistoric Planet is the new documentary series from Apple TV involving dinosaurs from the late Cretaceous, and it's one of the best things I have ever bear witness to with my own 2 eyes. Having all of the things I just said and more included in this one 5-episode documentary. This thing is great. Let's talk about it. Now, obviously, since this is a dinosaur documentary, we're obviously going to talk about the dinosaurs. But honestly, where do I even start? For one, in this documentary, there are so many dinosaurs shown, and they're all represented fairly well. From sauropod to theropod, every dinosaur is treated with respect. For theropods especially, it's remarkable. They aren't treated like giant movie monsters, but just regular animals. They barely do any hunting. Most of the time, they just either rest or hang out with their kids. And when they do hunt herbivores, it's actually really exciting. But the fact that they don't do this often makes these hunting sequences even better because, well, they're not as often. We get to see carnivores be regular animals. You want to know how happy I was when I saw an actual Tarbosaurus just being a regular animal? We had 3 South Korean films about Tarbosaurs, one of them being an actual documentary, and they either treat this thing as a powerhouse or an anime protagonist. So to see not only a paleo-accurate Tarbosaurus, but a Tarbosaurus that just acts like a regular animal is refreshing to me. But it's not just carnivores that get this type of really good treatment, as herbivores also get some really good treatment as well. From Triceratops traveling underground to get to this location so then they can eat clay to even out the poison from some plants that they eat, to the Dinosaurus scratching itself on a dead tree so that it can get rid of the blood-sucking flies. But my favorite segment involving herbivores has to be the stuff that they do with the Dreadnoughtus. Not only did they do something speculative by giving it air sacs on its neck to attract mates, but they also treat this thing like an elephant seal. And it gives us a sauropod on sauropod fight just like an elephant seal. And it's one of the best segments in this documentary. Hell, there's a lot of speculative stuff here, and a lot of it is, again, really cool. This is stuff like ammonites using bioluminescence to bond with mates, or a Carnotaurus dancing to attract a mate. There is a lot of cool and unique stuff that they do with these prehistoric creatures. From the way that they lived to the way that they hunted, a lot of it is really cool and unique and something that we've never seen before. And not only do they act great, but they look stunning as well. A lot of these dinosaurs look really stunning and really beautiful. So it's really no surprise that the people behind these CGI dinosaurs actually did a lot of films prior to this. This includes stuff like several Marvel projects, Jon Favreau's Abortion, Godzilla 2014, Godzilla vs. Kong, and my beloved. A lot of these dinosaurs look gorgeous, and I really can't name a bad design here. From the barn owl design of the Mononychus, to the red and blue of the Huffman's Mosasaur, to the best Velociraptor I will ever see. It's no mistake that all of these designs had a lot of effort and care put into them. Also, holy smokes, there's a lot of prehistoric creatures in this. Some I didn't even know until this documentary came out. Like, sure, we know T-Rex, Triceratops, Velociraptor, and maybe stuff like Dinosaurus and Tarbosaurus, but I've never heard of Kaikaifalu, Phosphotodraco, Mashikasaurus, or Cory Raptor. These are specific species that I've never heard of, and yet they're in this documentary and they are really cool. And there's also a surprising amount of focus on pterosaurs, which is actually really neat. From the obvious Quetzalcoatlus to the bi-icon Boralodactylus, these pterosaurs are given as much love as the dinosaurs. All of these creatures are given a lot of love. These dinosaurs, these pterosaurs, these marine reptiles are great. This whole documentary is great! Alright, so enough about me gushing about the dinosaurs. What else in this documentary is great? Well, some of the cinematography and editing is actually really solid. You got the obvious landscape shots, your beautiful underwater shots, and the odd stuff like the black and white nighttime filter and the occasional time-lapse. David Attenborough does a really great job of narrating the events that happen in this documentary, and his voice is perfect for a documentary. Ironic because he has done several documentaries before. And he just has this voice that's perfect for a documentary, especially one like this. Oh, and here's a fun fact. Sir David Attenborough is related to the late Sir Richard Attenborough, John Hammond himself from Jurassic Park. The score done by Anzi Rosman, Kara Talv, and Hans Zimmer is really spectacular. The music fits the mood for each scene very well, and on their own, they're really solid tracks. Here are a few examples of those pretty good tracks. However, as much as I am gushing about this documentary, there are a couple flaws that hold this thing back from being true perfection. There are some boring segments here and there, and they kinda ruin the flow of certain episodes. And really, they are kinda forgettable in my eyes. The stuff involving the hadrosaurs especially, as they feel very, very slow. Another problem is that most of these episodes are named after a certain biome which the episode takes place in. Which would be fine, except they don't really focus on said biome the episode is named after. Freshwater specifically has this problem, as it doesn't really focus much on, well, the freshwater. Sure, it's still entertaining, you got some really cool stuff in there, but more or less, it doesn't focus on the freshwater. The only way these segments somehow connect to freshwater is that they happen to be right next to freshwater. And I know a lot of you are gonna hate me for this, but Ice Worlds is my least favorite episode of Prehistoric Planet. Oh, don't get me wrong, it's still really good, but I just feel that it was the weakest out of the 5. Whatever people say about freshwater, I can easily say here in Ice World. That's because only 2 of these 6 segments focus on the Ice World. The rest of the 4 segments either take place on beaches, on volcanic mountains, in forests, but never really any ice worlds. Wouldn't mind so much, but most of these segments are pretty boring. Its 2 ice hunts were pretty cool, and the stuff with the Ornithomimus was pretty cute. And I do like the Ornithomimus with its red wings and its ugly-ass TikTok haircut, but the other 3 sequences just feel unneeded. The Troodontid hunt was cool, if a bit unnecessary. The stuff with the crested hadrosaur was a bit dull, and the stuff with the Arctic ankylosaur was a bit boring in my opinion. If they trimmed the hadrosaur stuff, expanded on the Troodontid stuff, and cut out the ankylosaurus stuff, then I feel like Ice Worlds would have been improved upon and actually be on par with something like, say, deserts or even coasts in my opinion. And yes, unlike freshwater, there were sequences that did take place in the snow, but freshwater had more entertaining sequences. Stuff like, say, the best Velociraptor hunt, the introduction of 2 new Tyrannosaurs, who I'm going to call Francis and Frankie, the Dinosaurus, and of course, how could I fail to mention the hyperspeed Quetzalcoatlus? Overall, I just felt like Ice Worlds fell a little bit too short, which is really sad because it looked to be one of the better episodes of Prehistoric Planet, but it sadly ended up being the worst. Still really good, but the worst. However, aside from those flaws, Prehistoric Planet is still one of the best dinosaur documentaries I have ever seen. With a solid presentation, with gorgeous special effects, with really good narration, and really good music, it's no secret why people in the Paleo community are celebrating it as much as they are. It's not a perfect documentary, but it's definitely one of the best I have ever seen. And I'm giving Prehistoric Planet a well-deserved 9 out of 10. It is amazing, and you should watch it and stuff. Get a 7-day free trial on Apple TV+. This is not a suggestion, this is an order. Also, here are my ratings for all the episodes of Prehistoric Planet. I'm Xenofilms Productions, and holy shit, Primal Season 2! Fuck yeah, boy!